Part 2 of Volume 1 of the Kingdom Hearts 2 light novel, The Destruction of Hollow Bastion, Prologue, and Alone. Sensing that Sora and his friends had set out on their journey, Naminé opened her eyes. Her hands clasped as in prayer fell to her sides, and she lifted her gaze to the man in the black cloak beside her.
"So you're leaving too?"
said Ansem, who was actually Riku. They were on a quiet beach not too far from Twilight Town.
"Do you two even have anywhere to go?"
Axel wondered from his perch on one of the boulders that dotted the shore.
"Do you?"
Riku replied, staring out at the horizon.
"I never had anywhere to go in the first place. We nobodies don't belong, period. Nowhere to go and nowhere to come home to. Right, Naminé?"
She didn't answer, but only looked down at the sand. He's right. We nobodies don't know why we were born or where we should go.
"The bargain's over now,"
Riku said to Naminé's back.
"We don't have to listen to that guy anymore, do we?"
He sounded as if he wanted to confirm it with her. Well, Naminé faltered, unable to raise her eyes. What was she supposed to do now? Should she go with Riku? Should she part ways with Axel? Riku and I are different, she thought. But Axel and I are the same. As if he had picked up on her hesitation, Axel stood and stretched.
"I'm gonna have to go a different direction. You and me, we don't want the same thing. Just like you and Diz didn't. I don't know about Naminé, though."
Riku winced momentarily at his words. I want to help Sora and his friends, Naminé said, eyes still downcast, but determination audible in her voice.
"Well, then that guy right there behind you is gonna get rid of you,"
Axel remarked.
"Just like he did to Roxas."
Naminé whirled around toward Riku. "Diz told you to eliminate me?" Riku didn't move. "He did, didn't he?" she demanded again, and finally Riku gave her a tiny nod. "So I really shouldn't go with you."
"That's not true."
Naminé shook her head.
"Let's go, Naminé,"
Axel called to her. Without a word, she nodded to Axel, and behind them, a dark portal opened up.
"Where are you going?"
Riku clenched his fists to keep from reaching out for her. "I don't know, but we'll meet again, Riku." She smiled at him.
"Is that a promise?"
Riku asked hesitantly. She dipped her head once. "Yes, a promise. We might go separate ways for now, but we'll see each other again, won't we?"
"Okay, I promise."
Riku nodded more forcefully, and then Naminé and Axel vanished into the dark portal. "I'm sorry, Riku," she told him softly, but the whisper never reached him. Alone on the beach, all Riku could hear was the sound of the waves, sending his memory back to the island. Chapter 1: Mysterious Tower. The train quietly came to a halt. "Is this the last stop?" Donald cocked his head at the view from the window. "Kind of a funny-looking place," Goofy noted with an anxious glance towards Sora. A light fog obscured the scene outside the train, making it hard to tell what sort of place they'd found themselves in. They only knew there was land. "Let's go," Sora said. The other two nodded. When they approached the door, it slid open for them as if it knew, and they stepped tentatively off the train. "Have you ever seen this place before?" Goofy's head swiveled from side to side. Donald was doing the same. "Nope." The land seemed to be an island floating in the air. "This is where King Mickey told us to go. Come on!" Sora dashed ahead. "Sora, wait up!" Donald tried to chase after him, but fell flat on his bill. "Did you forget how to run after sleeping so long?" Sora teased over his shoulder. Donald hopped up with an indignant quack and stomped furiously towards Sora. "That's enough out of you!" But Sora was focused on the train behind him, perplexed. "Sora!" Donald huffed. The boy didn't move. "Hello? Sora?" Goofy finally joined them. Sora quietly pointed to the train, or rather, where the train had been. "It's gone." "Whack?" Donald started. There was nothing but empty air. Even the railroad was gone. "Guess we just have to keep going," Sora said. Yup, guess so, Goofy agreed, sounding unconcerned, apparently more interested in the middle of the island. Look, there's a building. Sora and Donald followed his line of sight to a tall tower stretching up toward the night sky. You think anyone's there? Goofy asked. Only one way to find out. Sora dashed ahead yet again. The high-pitched rip of fabric soon followed. Huh? The boy searched his clothes for the tear. You got a rip here, Goofy said, peering at his side under his arm. Sora wouldn't have noticed on his own, but apparently he had grown quite a bit during the year he'd been asleep. The Keyblade wielder's pants barely reached his knees now, so that they served more as shorts. Gosh, Sora, you're sure growing fast, Goofy nodded, impressed. Donald agreed, but added, still pretty short though. Hey, what's that supposed to mean? Sora scowled. Another noise interrupted them, this time something strange from the tower. Did you hear that? Goofy cupped his hand to his perked ear, his head tilted. Sure did. Sora ran toward the source of the noise. A bulky, armored shape was peeking inside the tower through the gap between the double doors. At first glance, there didn't seem to be much cause for suspicion. What you doin'? Asked Donald. The figure replied with a sparing glance. Heh, I sent some of my lackeys inside to see if the master of this here tower is as big and tough as they say. Word is, he's a real powerful sorcerer, which would make him the perfect bodyguard for me. A haughty voice belonged to a male. The trio exchanged glances. See, it don't matter how tough he is, he went on. Once he's a Heartless, he'll do what I say. Donald leaped up at the familiar term. A Heartless? Sora and Goofy tensed, prepared for a fight. That's right, those things that come out of the darkness in folks' hearts. And with all those Heartless at her side, Maleficent's gonna conquer everything. And since I got me a debt to pay to that nice old witch, I'm going round to a bunch of different worlds, building an army of Heartless special for her. Get it? He waved his arms as if lecturing them, even though he never took his eyes off the gap into the tower. Why am I talking to you pipsqueaks anyway? Go on, scram! I'm behind schedule already. He shooed them away once more. You ought to find something nicer to do, Goofy said. And the trio had soundly defeated Maleficent, hadn't they? Says who? The person at the door finally turned to face them. What? Ah! It's you! At the same time, Donald and Goofy leaped back, also startled, and shouted, Pete! So that was the name of the guy at the door. What are you two Nimrods doing here? What are you doing? Donald retorted. A friend of yours? Sora whispered to Goofy, finally catching on. Pete used to cause trouble all the time in our world. His Majesty banished him to another dimension a long time ago. Wonder how he escaped. Goofy folded his arms in thought. Pete burst into loud, mean laughter. You want to know, eh? Maleficent busted me out, that's how. And now your world, nah, all the worlds are gonna belong to yours truly. He announced in one blustery breath, enormously full of himself, then made a small amendment. And Maleficent, of course. The trio exchanged dubious grins. Maleficent, huh? Sora remarked. What's so funny? Any moment now, steam would come pouring out of Pete's ears. Or so it seemed. Why, Maleficent is so great. Sora cut him off. She's gone. Huh? Maleficent won't be helping you now, Goofy said breezily. What do you mean? Pete bellowed, red-faced. Donald clamped his bill shut to contain his laughter. You! As Pete finally deduced the situation, he started trembling with rage. So you're the ones who did it. Well... Sora shrugged as if confessing to a bout of mischief. We might have had something to do with it. Pete snarled, staring at his feet and shaking as he tried to contain himself. The trio exchanged a glance, wondering what to do, but at last Pete shouted again. Heartless Squad, round up! On cue, Heartless rose from the ground. Whoa! Gripping his wand, Donald jumped away from one that appeared right beside him. Actually, this'll be kind of fun! Sora rubbed his nose in anticipation and readied the Keyblade.
Gosh, Sora, I sure wouldn't,
Goofy said, sounding a bit confused. The ring of Heartless crept closer and closer. This won't even take a second. Sora hurtled at them. A ball of flame shot from Donald's wand. Fire!
Aw, shucks. Yahoo!
Goofy rushed at the Heartless on the other side. Sure enough, scarcely a second later, the Heartless were gone. Sora grinned at Pete. Want to keep going?
You just wait. Nobody, and I mean nobody, messes with the mighty Pete.
The trembling had turned to violent shaking.
So, mighty Pete, who lives in this tower anyway?
Sora asked casually, his hands linked behind his head.
Oh, you don't know, huh? It's old Yen Sid. Of course, he's probably a Heartless by now.
Pete sneered. Hearing the name, Donald hopped in surprise. Master Yen Sid is here? He shoved Pete out of the way, yanked the doors open, then waddled hastily into the tower.
Yen Sid? Who's that?
Sora asked Goofy, mystified.
He's the king's teacher,
Goofy replied, halfway into the tower himself. Wow, he must be powerful. The last of the three followed them.
Hey, hold it right there, Pipsqueaks!
Pete started to run after the trio, but the door slammed in his face with a boom and enough force to send him tumbling backward.
You won't get away with this!
But inside the tower, Sora and his friends never even heard Pete's blustering. Amid the soft rush of the waves, he idled on the seashore. He had only one thing to do, to help Sora. But he was alone again. Had he made a mistake letting Axel and Naminé meet? If not for that, he wouldn't be by himself now. But Axel and Naminé were both nobodies, beings that Diz had said were never supposed to exist. Was that true? Was it really so wrong for nobodies to exist? What he'd learned from Diz wasn't enough to go on. He needed to know more than Diz, to know more about the organization. So he tried approaching Axel with the deal. He needed information about the things Diz knew, the things Axel knew, and the secrets of the worlds. The deal had been a success, and they had pooled their knowledge. Thanks to that, he had been able to learn more about the truth and more about the organization than Diz. Axel had offered them information about the organization's leader, too. Riku sat down on the boulder where Axel had been perched moments before and gazed out to where the sky met the sea. He wanted to go back to their sea, their island. He wanted to run down the shore with Sora. That was the wish in his heart. But doubt still lingered in Riku's heart too. Had he done the right thing? There had been no other way to awaken Sora. The only option was to destroy Roxas, or rather, to return him to Sora. But thanks to what Axel and Naminé had said, he didn't know whether his choice was correct. He even wondered if there had been an alternative after all. Riku pulled his hood up. He had to be on his way, quickly. Suddenly, a high voice addressed him.
Huh, so this is where you were.
He turned.
Mickey, Your Majesty.
Standing there was a dear friend of his, Mickey Mouse, the king of his own world. Still wearing the same black cloak as when they'd left Castle Oblivion, he appeared exactly the same as when Riku had last seen him, in every respect.
You left me with your stuff and took off. Gosh, I've been looking all over for ya.
King Mickey told him kindly. In fact, he was smiling.
Gonna give a fella a hug this time? And no need to call me Your Majesty, remember? Just Mickey.
Right, Riku remembered. Back in Castle Oblivion, I was so glad to see him. So glad I wasn't alone. And I hugged him. But I can't do that now. And I can't just call him Mickey now either. Not when I look like this. Your Majesty, Riku tugged his hood deeper over his face.
Gosh, Riku, I think you gotta tell me what happened.
Riku nodded faintly. The trio climbed up the stairs in the tower, defeating Heartless as they went. Take that! Sora landed a blow with the Keyblade.
Sora, they won't let up!
Goofy exclaimed, fending off an attack. Heartless, Heartless, and more Heartless. Things haven't changed one bit, Donald complained, waving his wand about. It was true. They'd closed that great door, and yet the worlds were still overrun with Heartless.
Gosh, it's a good thing we're on the job then.
Goofy knocked another back with his shield.
So, the worlds aren't at peace after all?
Sora said, mostly to himself. His companions exchanged a troubled glance.
Master Yen Sid ought to be able to tell us what's going on.
Sora and Donald nodded. Well, let's get to the top of this tower first, Sora declared, heading onward and upward at a run, with the other two hot on his heels. At last they arrived at what seemed to be the tower's summit. Beyond the door was a small room. Whew! Catching their breath after the fight up the stairs, the trio looked up. They met the level gaze of an old man with a snowy white beard and a blue robe. He reminded Sora a little bit of Merlin back in Traverse Town, but this sorcerer wore a much more severe expression, which made him terribly intimidating. An honor to meet you, Master Yen Sid, Donald said, and he dropped to one knee. Goofy did the same. Hey there! Sora made no such effort in his greeting. Donald grabbed his head and forced him down to one knee, too. What? Sora, show some respect, Donald hissed at him as he struggled.
So, you are Sora?
Yen Sid asked. Sora shook off Donald and stood up with a grin. Pleasure to meet you, Master Yen Sid. Yen Sid smiled very faintly in return.
Now then, have you seen the king?
Goofy got to his feet and stood rigidly at attention.
We have, Master, but we didn't get to talk to him. Yes, he's been quite busy of late.
Yen Sid nodded and gestured to Donald, who was still kneeling, that his deference was enough. The sorcerer went on with a grave expression.
It would seem that the task of instructing you three falls upon my shoulders. You have a perilous journey ahead of you, and you must be well prepared.
The trio shared a glance. You mean we have to go on another quest? Sora said, dismayed. I was hoping I'd get to find my friend Riku, so we could go back to the islands.
Yes, I know, but everything in your journey, Sora, is connected. Whether you will find your way back to the islands, whether you will be alone or with your friend, and whether your islands will still be as you left them.
As Yen Sid spoke, Sora kept his attention fixed on him.
The key that connects them all is you, Sora.
I'm the key? Sora repeated.
Chosen wielder of the Keyblade, you are the key that will open the door to the light.
Goofy cocked his head.
But didn't we close the door?
It doesn't make any sense that the Heartless are still around, Donald fumed. Yen Sid dropped his gaze momentarily, and then spoke again.
Your endeavors did prevent an immense effusion of Heartless from the great darkness. Make no mistake.
That seemed reasonable. They defeated Ansem after all, and closed the door.
However, the Heartless are embodiments of darkness, and darkness lingers in every heart.
Yen Sid's voice was low and ominous.
The Heartless are fewer than before, but while darkness yet exists, it will be difficult to eliminate them.
Then that must mean, if everybody's heart was full of light, the Heartless would go away, Goofy said. Yen Sid dipped his head and continued.
As ever, the Heartless roam about in search of hearts, and you must keep vigilant.
We've got that covered, Master Yen Sid, Goofy replied.
However, you will have other enemies to contend with as well.
Startled, the three exchanged glances again.
At times, if someone possessed of a strong heart and will, be they good or evil, should become a Heartless, the empty shell left behind begins to act with a will of its own. That is a nobody.
A nobody? Donald echoed.
An empty vessel whose heart has been stolen away. A spirit whose existence lingers even as the body fades. No, in fact, nobodies do not truly exist at all. They may seem to have feelings, but this is a ruse. They only pretend to have hearts. You must not be deceived.
Nobodies. those who did not truly exist. They'd never heard of this before. They couldn't have. And yet Sora felt like he knew about nobodies from somewhere. His heart skipped a beat. Why would hearing about these nobodies do that to me?
You may meet alarming numbers of common nobodies, but they are only empty shells. They will attempt to do you harm, but before long they will dissolve into the darkness.
Yen Sid paused and pointed to the empty space beside them. The hazy shape of a man in a black cloak materialized there. "Who's that?" Sora asked quietly. He felt as if he'd seen that figure before, but he couldn't remember.
That is one of the powerful nobodies who have formed a group called Organization 13. They command the lesser nobodies.
Organization 13, Sora murmured, trying to etch the words into his mind.
While heartless act on instinct, nobodies function at a higher level,
Yen Sid explained.
They can think and plan, and it seems that under the instruction of Organization 13, they are working toward a higher goal.
Gosh, do we know what that might be? Goofy asked. Yen Sid shook his head.
We cannot begin to guess. The king sensed the danger and journeyed forth to confront it. Now he's traveling from world to world, fighting the heartless as he searches for what Organization 13 and the nobodies are planning.
A cabal with an unknown objective, Organization 13. Sora had to wonder why his heart pounded at hearing the term. Still, it doesn't change what our goals are, he thought, finding Riku and the king. If they found the king, who was investigating the organization, then they would learn where Riku was too, and what the organization was planning. Then we'd better track down the king first, Sora blurted with determination. Donald and Goofy looked at each other. There was nothing to be afraid of. This wasn't a new quest. They were still on their original journey. This was still Sora's quest to find Riku, keep his promise to Kairi, and go back to Destiny Islands. Jiminy Cricket hopped out then from his hiding place in Sora's pocket. Sora was startled. Whoa! And we mustn't forget to thank Naminé. With that, Jiminy ducked back into the pocket. Yup, that's right, Goofy remarked. We gotta thank Naminé. The trio grinned at one another. Satisfied to see their optimism, Yen Sid inclined his head and indicated a door in the corner.
Before you go, you'll need more suitable traveling clothes, he told Sora. Those seem a bit small for you.
Donald and Goofy shared a laugh.
It's true, Master Yen Sid, Goofy said, unable to keep a funny story to himself. Sora's clothes ripped just now. I've summoned 3 good fairies to take care of that. They may be rather fussy about clothing, but you need only to ask and they'll create some new garments for you,
Yen Sid said to Sora with care. The pair trapezed through the heavy mist. How long would they have to make their way without even a path to follow? Axel? Naminé called out to the red-haired man striding briskly ahead of her. He halted, but didn't turn.
What? Need a break?
No, that's not it. Naminé paused, watching his broad back.
Having second thoughts about coming with me then?
I don't regret anything, she told him, and then started walking again. Where are we going?
I wonder.
Axel's steps resumed too. She wasn't sure how far they should keep going in this mist. What are we going to do? Naminé pressed.
Haven't decided yet.
Axel's pace remained steady this time. Roxas won't be coming back. At that, Axel stopped in his tracks and looked back at her.
That was Diz's plan, wasn't it? I remember that much.
His expression was hard, closed like a fortress. Seeing that, it was impossible to believe that Axel had no heart. Heart. She'd rolled the word around in her mind. What did that mean, anyway? What was a heart? Riku's all alone now.
That's what's bothering you?
Axel laughed softly, watching her downturned face.
He's human, you know, not a nobody.
But still, Naminé trailed off. Axel hounded her further.
Even if he looks like that now.
How he looks has nothing to do with it. Naminé was certain of that. So long as he still has his heart, his appearance doesn't matter, she repeated to herself. And then, realizing something, she raised her head. Hey, Axel, if we had hearts...
Well, we don't. Got it memorized?
Axel interrupted bluntly.
And you know, traitors to the organization, for the record. Do you know what that means?
Yes, I know.
Then keep walking.
Naminé bit her lip and plodded onward. When Sora, Donald, and Goofy entered the back room, 3 fairies who gave the impression of sweet old aunties greeted them with bright smiles. In their colored robes and hats, 1 green, 1 blue, and 1 red, they immediately began chattering. Why, look who's here! Sora, Donald, and Goofy! The first one to speak was the one in red. If you're looking for new clothes, you've come to the right place, said the one in blue. I'll take care of the designing, the one in green gushed. Wait, slow down, Sora said, a bit flustered. Can you tell me your names? The fairies introduced themselves self-importantly. I'm Merryweather. I'm Flora. And I'm Fauna. They seemed to be rather flighty fairies, so the one in the blue was Merryweather, the red one was Flora, and the green was Fauna. Well, Sora, why don't we get started? Fauna waved her slender magic wand, and Sora's entire outfit turned green. Oh, that'll never do! This time, Merryweather's wand turned Sora's garments blue.
You two haven't the foggiest idea what you're doing,
Flora declared, and with a flick of her wrist, Sora's clothes turned red. No, this is much better. Is it? Oh, what is that? This'll do it! The barrage of magic continued, and Sora's clothes shifted through colors so fast his eyes hurt. Aw, come on! Would you just decide? He complained.
Very well. All together now, dears. No more squabbling,
Flora said, and the other 2 bobbed their heads in agreement.
Here goes.
The 3 magic wands shot out jets of sparkles, and Sora's outfit settled into a stylish black, with trimming here and there in different colors. Oh my! Not bad at all.
Oh yes, he does look dashing.
In response, Sora struck a smart pose, showing off his new threads. His 2 friends cracked up. Hey, don't laugh at me! But... Donald couldn't contain his quacking laughter. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Yup, Goofy agreed. The fairies seemed satisfied too. Sora examined his new clothes and hopped to test the fit. Outside the window, a suspicious shape watched the scene, but those inside never noticed. Oh, and Master Yen Sid's caught something for you too, Fauna said, excited. Wow! Thanks, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, Sora exclaimed. You're very welcome. The 3 fairies happily waved to him, the sleeves of their robes fluttering. Sora bowed to them like a prince at a great ball and rushed back out to the sorcerer's room. The men in black clothes gathered in the hall of spotless white marble. Their hoods hid their faces and their expressions. Only 6 of the 13 seats were occupied. The 5 lost at Castle Oblivion, number 13, Roxas, and number 8, Axel, were gone. Number 2, Xigbar, opened the discussion.
So, the Keyblade's on the move. Isn't that part of the plan?
Zaldin said, number 3.
Losing number 13, well, Roxas sure wasn't.
Xigbar shot back and then turned his gaze downward.
We should have made sure our little hero stayed incomplete.
What about Axel? Number 9, Demix, softly mentioned the last missing number. Luxord, number 10, answered bluntly from his low-ranking seat.
He's apparently betrayed us. Betrayed us,
rumbled number 1, Xemnas. Really? Him? Demix practically squealed.
He was involved in the incident at Castle Oblivion. I warned you he had a hand in the demise of Marluxia and the others, and yet someone failed to eliminate him.
Saïx, number 7, glared at Xigbar from under his hood with a sharp glint in his eyes.
Hey, he's the only one who's had direct contact with the Keyblade wielder.
Sigbar replied, unruffled.
Observe them.
Xemnas issued the order quietly.
Cyax, you go after Axel. Demyx, you follow the kid.
Sigbar translated it for the rest of them as if he were privy to Xemnas' thoughts. The kid? Roxas, you mean? Demyx got to his feet.
Yes, that's right. Roxas.
Sigbar smiled darkly and exchanged a glance with Xemnas. So what do you think, Master Yen Sid? Sora, freshly outfitted, ran up to the sorcerer.
Oh, quite good indeed,
Yen Sid replied, moving to the window.
Here, this is my final gift before you depart.
Floating outside the wide-open casement was the gummy ship. Donald squawked in delight and dashed to the window. All right, let's get going. Sora seemed ready to jump straight out the window as he waited for confirmation from Donald and Goofy.
Now, hold on a moment,
Yen Sid said reprovingly.
Thanks to your previous endeavors, the worlds have returned to their original states, which means the pathways between them have disappeared.
Was he saying that they couldn't simply travel from world to world like before? Sora's shoulders slumped. That's a problem, Donald remarked, leaning out the window to stare at the ship.
Have no fear. If what the king suspected proves true, the worlds will have prepared new pathways, which you should be able to use by unlocking certain gates. As for how to unlock them, the Keyblade will serve as your guide.
The weapon in Sora's hand gleamed.
Though the worlds may seem far apart and out of reach,
Yen Sid said,
they all remain bound by invisible ties, as do our hearts.
Sora nodded. Our hearts are connected. He was linked to Riku, and to Kairi, and King Mickey, and to all the people they'd met on their journey.
Precisely,
Yen Sid said.
But be warned, the heartless and the nobodies will be using their own paths, corridors of darkness, to move from world to world. And they may be trying to link their corridors to the gates between the worlds.
Sora nodded again, more forcefully this time.
That is all I can tell you. Go forth, Sora, Donald, Goofy. Your friends in the worlds are waiting.
The trio looked at one another and nodded in unison. Okay, we're off, Sora declared and leaped out to the gummy ship as it floated up to meet them. Donald and Goofy briskly saluted Yen Sid, who smiled at them in return, then jumped out after Sora. The humming of the engine grew steadily louder, and the gummy ship took off into the other sky. Just then, an ink-black shadow fluttered to the floor in the middle of the fairy's room. Goodness, what is that? Merryweather edged back from it in apprehension. A solitary raven clutched a length of black cloth in its claws and cawed a sinister caw. The fairies eyed the cloth fearfully. Haven't we seen that somewhere before? Merryweather said. I believe so, Fauna mused. I wonder whose... Is it As Merryweather began to utter a name, Flora rushed in to interrupt. No, we mustn't remember her name. Oh, I've got a terrible feeling about this. Shivering, she crossed her arms and hugged herself. Oh, she was a mean old witch. Oh no, the memories are coming back. This is no good. What'll we do? Merryweather fretted, beginning to pace. Between them, the black cloth slowly squirmed into the form of a person. We've got to tell Master Yen Sid, cried Fauna. Yes, that's what we'll do, Fauna agreed. The two of them flew out of the room, leaving behind the black cloth and Merryweather. The cloth, which had taken the shape of a dress, lifted into the air by itself and transformed into a certain witch who should have stayed lost in their memories. Merryweather screamed the name of the enchantress who had imprisoned their beloved princess within tangles of cursed thorns. The princess was called Aurora, and the witch was called Maleficent! Merryweather scurried out after the others, leaving Maleficent to survey the room with some degree of familiarity. And then she let out a high, cruel laugh.